Hi, this is Damon Pistolka, host of The Faces of Business, where I talk with interesting people, sharing life and business experiences to entertain, engage, build community, and provide information to help others succeed. If you're interested in learning more about one of our guests or how we are helping business owners generate wealth and build businesses they can sell or succeed at Exit Your Way, you can find more information on our website, exityourway.com, or by contacting me directly, Damon at exityourway.com. I hope you enjoy the show. Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited for our guest today on the Faces of Business. We have none other than Jeff Munn with us today, and we are going to talk about mindset challenges when scaling and selling businesses. Thanks for being here today, Jeff.
Yeah, happy to be here, Damon. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, yes, this is going to be great. It's going to be great. So we always like to start the show off, Jeff, learning a little bit more about who we're talking with. So
yeah,
let's hear about your background and how you got into helping people with their mindset when they're at this point working and scaling and selling their businesses.
Yeah, the mindset work goes way back. I started out as a compulsive overachiever, and so as a kid, my dad was an athlete and I was not an athlete, and I figured out I was pretty good at school, and that's kind of how I got my sense of meaning and purpose, at least when I was young, and it didn't serve me very well. I mean, I ended up always asking myself, well, what would the highest achieving thing be to do? And so it was like getting really good grades and going to a good college and graduating with highest honors and going to law school. And then I found myself in my 20s working at a law firm, and like I was running about as full speed as I could, and was stressing out and started having panic attacks, and figure it out over a period of time. I mean, this was the early 90s, and people didn't even know what mental health was, let alone talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? It just, like, the idea of going to a therapist or any of that just wasn't even a thing. And I was in Chicago at the time, and Phil Jackson was coaching the Bulls, and he started talking about meditation.
Yeah.
And I'd read some stuff about meditation, but I thought it was kind of weird or kooky or whatever, and so I just I kind of dismissed it. And then when Phil Jackson started talking about it and Chicago Bulls started talking about it, it was like, oh, well, maybe this is something I should try. And it worked, and the panic attacks went away, and I started getting promotions at work, and I just started being a lot more present, a lot more able to connect with people. And a period of years passed, and I decided I wanted to start helping people with that, and started studying it. And I worked with some spiritual teachers, I worked with some coaches, I got some training. In 2016, I was at my last corporate job, which was with Fidelity Investments in Boston, and I got laid off. And I thought, oh, I want to become a coach. I'd been thinking about that for a while, and now it was like, oh, you've got this. You have no job. You have a severance package. You have a little runway. Do you want to? The universe was saying, hey, do you want to give this a try? And I decided to jump in, and I got a referral to a guy who was running a big local construction company. And suddenly I was in this. I had never run a business. I didn't really understand the challenges from that perspective until I coached this particular client. And then after him, I think, for a while it was like half founders I was working with. And now it's like the vast majority of the people that I work with are founders, because there's this exciting combination of, risk taking, and the ones that I work with, at least, have figured out, oh, there is this leverage point that a lot of people don't see. Through my own personal growth, I can become a more effective leader, get more done, get more accomplished, grow a bigger, more successful business. And ultimately, and this is why you and I are talking, have a more successful exit. So it really became a passion of mine to work with these folks and really get a sense of what's the best way that I can help them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to real quick say, hey, Harry. Harry says, happy Thursday. Thanks for
Happy
stopping by
Thursday,
today, Harry. And we got John Spiesman here. Thanks for stopping by today, John, down in Utah. He says, hello, Damon and Jeff. Thanks, guys, for dropping the comments in here. You, Jeff, we didn't even, it might be that we're going off on the first tangent of the day.
That's okay.
But
we're here for.
I tell you, I really, really enjoy your approach, because most people, couple things. You said one thing here that I want to just touch on for a second. You said personal growth and how that helps enable you to be a much better business leader and grow much more successful businesses.
Yeah.
I just have to wonder where the heck that was at, in the last 2 decades, when everybody was talking about you need to grind in business, and they didn't focus on that enough, because now it seems like we're finally starting to talk about it. When you see people that are actually implementing it, they are the ones that have really done incredible things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hope you hear it called hustle culture or grind, or it's like, oh, I've seen Elon Musk say things like, well, if you're not willing to work 100 hours a week, it's not cut out for you. And I don't believe that's true. I believe you're doing something horribly wrong as a leader if you're ever working 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. How long
Yeah.
can you actually do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that, I'm glad you brought up the personal growth as that leverage point, because it is, in business, the founders are often the limiting factor of the scalability and the size, the profitability, and so many things in their businesses.
Yeah. That first founder that I talked about, one of the things he said to me before he hired me was, I am between being a small business and a big business, and I realize the thing getting in the way is me. So that's exactly right. Like, how do you step back and let other people lead? If I work 100 hours a week, that's 100 hours a week for me. If I'm leading a team of 5 people or 10 people or 50 people, they can work 40 hours a week and still get way more done than I ever could. So, the math just doesn't work when you think about that kind of grinded out culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got AJ stopped by and said almost a long weekend and said hello. That's great.
Yeah.
And then John's got a comment here too. I think this is real poignant at this time. If you want your team to grow, the leader needs to show the way by prioritizing their own growth. And
Absolutely.
Boom. Well,
I worked at a consulting firm years ago, and was the guy that I was reporting to. He was running kind of the senior leadership team for this particular part of the business, and he always emphasized how much he wanted us to have work-life balance, et cetera, et cetera. But it did not matter when you sent him an email, he responded in 5 minutes. And so his team was like, well, wait, which is it? Am I supposed to have work-life balance, or am I actually supposed to work like how my boss works? And so he was not a very good example on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Well, it is interesting to see the differences that when you do, as a founder, as an owner in the business, make that switch though, and really work through those things. And we'll talk on that a little bit more. Now, one of the things that you do, which I think is really, really interesting, is you're working mostly with founders that are scaling and going to be exiting someday, however they're going to do it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've always thought about when someone comes and says, well, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask them, I say, are you sure?
Yeah.
And they look at you crazy, like, well, of course I do. And so you understanding mindset, understanding people going through this situation, talk about that a little bit, and just the fact that this is going to be a challenging situation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to prepare for someone for what they're going to go through until they're actually going to go through it. And it's not just the hours. The hours are somewhat manageable depending on your own leadership style and how effective a team you've built. Because if you've got an effective finance team, if you've got other people, they can carry a lot of the heavy load around that stuff. But it's the psychological ups and downs. One day you think you've got a deal, and then like the next morning you get a phone call, nope, they're out, or they want this, or what about this, or they feel like you were trying to deceive them. All of these things that keep showing up over and over again. And it's so hard to keep a level head when you're in the middle of it and you're thinking, I worked 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I get one shot at this. Everything is riding on this, and I've got to do it right. And moment to moment, you don't know where you are in the process. It's tough.
Yeah. It is really hard to describe unless you've been through that with someone or been through it yourself. That's for sure. So we're talking about you for a second, and I think I'm going to know the answer, or got an idea, but what are you most passionate about in business today? You've had a lot of things you've done, but what really gives you the most joy, satisfaction, get you up in the morning kind of stuff?
When I can help someone see that a lot of the most difficult things in their life, they are making up. When they really get that, oh my God, nothing like it. That's why I do what I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And that is hard to do, but once you do it, and you can kind of catch yourself a little bit after you've done it a few
you get better at it.
Get better at it. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, okay. That's not actually happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome though, because especially in the situation where you're scaling, you're in that mode of trying to get things ready, you're getting the business is growing rapidly, and then you're thinking about the exit. There's just so many things that you're going. We're taught in business that we need to anticipate and prepare.
Right. And
there's a fine line between going, am I anticipating, or am I driving myself crazy with stuff that's never going to happen?
Yeah. Is it Eisenhower who said planning is essential, plans are useless?
There you go.
And a lot of you need to like have some contingencies or some general thoughts, but a lot of that stuff, like I'll get into conversations with people about, well, this person isn't working out, and I need to I need to let them go, and I need to prepare for the conversation, and blah 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 blah, and they'll create this like script, and I'll talk to them afterwards, and it's like, how long were you actually able to follow the script? And I was like, oh, we were off of it in the first like 30 seconds, and then we have the capacity to figure it out. And that's what we're doing most of the time.
Yeah. Capacity to figure it out. Yep. Awesome. So when you're start out working with these founders, what is the most common thing that they say? It's like, is it, they're coming to you, they're saying something's not going right.
Right. It's usually something along the lines of, I need to stop getting in my own way.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it looks different than that. Sometimes it's like, I can't find good people, or it will look like this is something outside happening to them, but it's really, no, you actually need to figure out how to let go and give some people some general direction, and then hire someone who knows more than you about finance, about product, about sales, about, operations, whatever it happens to be, and let them do a better job than you ever would have. And it's that shift. There's always this tension between growth and control. And if you want control, that's fine, but you're going to limit your growth. You're going to get stuck in that 100-hour-a-week paradigm. There's only so much you can do. If you're hiring someone to do something exactly the way you would have done it and then micromanaging them, you really haven't accomplished much.
Yeah.
But man, to get a good finance person or a good salesperson and just let them run, that's when things really start to happen.
Yeah. So when you're helping these people in the scaling portion,
yeah,
do you usually see that it is more around the way they're leading, or is it and that's driving the kind of people that they're putting in the positions or the roles, or do you think it is more about the business and things that the business is actually doing?
Well, my immediate response is it's around how they're leading, and not so much about how they're leading, but the identity or self-image from which they are leading.
Okay.
So if I've set up this set of rules in my head that the way that I succeed in the world is by being the smartest person in the room, or being the person who has the answer, or being the person who has does all of the critical client meetings, or all of those things, right? If that's what my identity is, it's going to be really hard for me to change my behavior until I am actually able to let go of that identity.
Yes. That is awesome. Let's talk about that just a moment. Harish here is dropped a few things, and he dropped a great book by Marco Efferson, 10 Steps to High Performance. And he said there's another one that's Leadership is Turning the Ship Around by Marquette. I've heard of that one before.
I've heard one called Turn the Ship Around. That might be the same book. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Turn the Ship Around. That's the one I think I'd heard.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
And
It's a great book.
He also mentions the 6 pillars of self-esteem. Leaders need to
know. I know some of Nathaniel Branden. I don't know that particular book.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, it's all of these things generally are pointing at the same issue, that it starts with, how are you showing up in the world, and what are the stories you're telling yourself about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. In that identity, God, that identity, it's in our ego as founders. I mean, it just gets in our way so much.
Well, it's ironic, right? Because it's this dual-edged sword, right? Because we didn't have that ego in the first place, we would have never started the business.
Yes.
And that's the thing that gets in the way of actually growing and scaling and ultimately selling the business. Because every step of the way to do this successfully, the owner has to step away one step at a time. So by the end, and you confirm this for me, Damon, but to maximize the value of your company, you need to be completely unnecessary to it.
Yep.
And that's terrifying. Like, why did I start this business if, it's...
Yeah. You said it well, though. That's what they need to start the business, and the transformation, this identity that was the reason they were successful in those initial years and got them there, because they often were the smartest one. They had the answers. They did know the critical path, or they
Right.
did have those sales relationships that really grew the business. But there's only so much of them to go around. And as you talked about earlier, working 100 hours, you can work all the hours in a week and you're still not going to be able to scale your business like a good team would.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And how do I build it? Like these people, they're first of all, they're human beings, so they're complicated. And they
Mm-hmm.
have ideas, and those ideas are different than mine sometimes. And like, well, wait, what do I do with that? I'm the one with the great idea, and they're coming in and wanting to change things.
Yeah. Yep. That's yes. Yes. Well, you hit it so well though. That's what starts that whole ego identity, all that stuff. And then that transition, if you can't make that transition, that's where you see these businesses just plateau. It's like,
Yeah.
that's where it is.
And that's fine
Yes.
as long as you don't want more and you're like frustrated that you can't get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there are a lot of, solo entrepreneur businesses where it's more of a lifestyle thing. And I want to do this a certain number of hours a week. I want to do work I enjoy. I want to make a decent living. Great. But that's, your clientele. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Um, the was Harish said, asking is the hardest task. Leaders are nervous about diluting their authority. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And what do I mean, all of the most current leadership thinking is around how do you give away as much of that authority as possible? How do you make that authority as close to the client or the customer as possible so that the people who actually understand the situation are the ones making the decision?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've always thought, that data helps.
Hmm.
Not that numbers are for everything, but the data really helps, because the founders often aren't data driven people.
Right.
And if they can make that transition into relying more on the data telling them, hey, our sales numbers are this, even if they're selling a different way than I am, they're still successful. Our
Right.
customer satisfaction is this, even though they don't do it quite the way that I did it, they're still successful.
Right.
And it gives them that that data gives those founders the confidence to be able to let those people move in the different directions, but still knowing that things are happening the way they should.
Right. Are we continuing to grow? Are we continuing to be profitable? Are we continuing to have high satisfaction? All
Mm-hmm.
those things. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, the thing that I love is, when a founder establishes 2 or 3 measures that have some tension between them, and then the art of it is, how do you manage sales growth while growing profitability at the same time? How do you manage client satisfaction while increasing your prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yep.
fun game to play.
Oh, yeah. Businesses. I don't know if it's the ultimate game, but it's a very fun game. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
very frustrating.
Mhm. Yeah.
So Harry said another comment. He said, my biggest growth came when I realized I wasn't a self-made person. Without my wife, teams, mentors, etc., helping me, I never would have grown both personally and professionally.
Oh, yeah.
And that's huge. I think when founders, you see some of these founders and they become ultra successful when they really embrace the fact that I don't have to do it all anymore. And now I
Mhm.
can multiply my effectiveness by getting all these smart people around me doing this stuff. And as long as, like I said, as long as I can make sure that things are going in the right direction yet, and we're all working in the same way, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most powerful things that the founder can do is just make sure that everyone has a sense of purpose and is kind of going in that same direction. And then it's like you want to be as minimally involved as you can manage and just let these brilliant people who you brought in take the reins.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So as you're working with these clients, you're helping them in this process. Give me an example without, telling anything you really shouldn't
Sure.
of the process going right, really working well.
Mm. So I had a client I worked with a couple years ago who he was the first non-founder CEO that the company had had. So he was brought in by the founders in a different role. Founder
Wow.
wanted to leave, realized that he was getting in the way of that growth, brought in my client to grow, and um, very quickly after taking over as CEO, they started getting some interest from potential buyers, and he helped usher the company through the process, ultimately sold to a strategic buyer. Um, he got a nice payday out of it. The founder got a very nice payday out of it. Ended up retiring. He's in his late 50s. And what I admired about him was that during the process, there were some ups and downs, but he had done enough work on himself that he wasn't like, there weren't these wild swings. And he was really great at involving his team and
Yeah.
just, yeah, this is what the finance people are asking for. This is what this group is asking for, et cetera, et cetera. And it was, start to finish, I think it was about a 3-month process. And
Uh-huh.
he worked about another 3 months and agreed to part ways.
Yeah.
And he's still not quite managing the retirement piece of it. And
Yeah.
that's another, topic that you and I have
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
Um, but the process of the sale and going through all that was remarkably smooth.
Yeah.
And if you're going to ask the converse, I can.
Yeah. Yes. Let's hear
Yeah.
the converse of it, because that is not typically how things go.
No. And I had another client who it was hard because everything felt like a fire drill. Part of it was out of her control because she had lost a couple key people, so she needed to be doing more in the process than was ideal, and she recognized that. And so part of it was just her own capacity to kind of soldier through, but there was um, a kind of antagonistic outside investor involved. There was lots of dissension on the board about what the right thing was to do and when. And it was just a grind. And
Mhm.
every conversation that we had, she showed up kind of out of breath and like these were all the things that were happening, and this was the drama that happened at this point, and now it looks like this, and now it looks like that. Um, she did ultimately get through it, so it was a success from that point, and she got more than she anticipated as a sale price. Um, but I also think she's probably more. It was ultimately a private equity investor, and I think she's probably more involved than would be ideal
Mhm.
going forward.
Yeah.
So that's more of a
Mhm.
mixed result. But as far as the actual grind, the marathon of that was really hard, and it was
Yeah.
really hard for me to watch.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I mean, and this is what people that are getting ready, and you said this was an investor-based investor buyer.
yeah,
Uh, the difference in what you are going to have to do when you sell to an investor compared to another private individual or a strategic that's in the business
yeah,
is night and day. And when we're talking with clients about that, and they always say, "Oh, I'd like to, sell into private equity or something like that." Or if they're a little smaller, maybe they'd say search fund, but they really don't understand what that entails and the preparation it takes to do it without it being a fire drill.
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
not just the the stuff, them getting the records together, all that, because that's like baseline stuff.
Right. Right.
It's like saying I make a high quality car.
Yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
not doing that, you're just not in business, right? But what it takes when you go into these investors, they don't understand things like these specialists that you're going to have to call in. You are going to have to call in to get things like quality of earnings
Right. Yeah.
analysis done. And
Yeah.
you look at all this other stuff that and market analysis. I mean, that's the other thing that most sellers are just not even prepared to do, because if you don't do a deep dive market analysis, it's going to be a really tough when you get into diligence if you can't defend your market position and other things like that in it. But you never did that because it took you 20
Right.
years to grow the business, and you just
Exactly.
knew the
It just
market because
never
you were
occurred to you to even do that. You were running a business. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And you never thought about really looking at the quality of the earnings that you make and investing or investigating all your customers. And you may have had them for a long time and the relationships are a lot different. But from the outside looking in, um, those kind of things, and then the scrutiny of your team can, and like you said, she had some team changes. It
Yeah.
can make those things tremendously challenging.
Right. Right. And this was the case. And I'm thinking about a couple other clients of mine too, where you know, I haven't heard people talk about this. I would imagine you talk about this given your focus and how you help people. But, you know, do you like the people you're doing business with cannot be underestimated.
Oh,
Just like, do you get along with these folks? Do you trust them? Do you respect them? I mean, I've got, and I got involved after the fact, so I wasn't really there as it was happening, but I've got clients who, you know, they're kind of in the middle of their second bite at the private equity apple,
mhm.
and the first bite, it's like they do not respect who they did the deal with, and it
Mhm.
would, you know, and be really interesting to hear any thoughts you have of like, how do you suss that out up front, right? How do you
Yeah.
yeah, because, I mean, there's so many potential private equity partners now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of the things that we always do is we get, and I know this is not the greatest thing, but we start by we want to talk to two or three of the people they've done deals with,
Uh-huh.
and not necessarily that they're actively investing in now,
Uh-huh.
because
Yeah.
then we can usually get a better idea of the
Right.
experience
Right.
and what it was like all the way through the process, because it is such a different relationship. I
Yeah.
mean, this is potentially, and this from the mindset part of this, is that I used to be able to make decision last week if I wanted to go out and spend $100,000 on that nice new piece of equipment or some land or whatever the heck I thought, because that was a good business decision, that I
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
Well, when we're running in a private equity space, where in 5 to 7 years I have to increase my value this much, and we're going to do that, and we're going to buy all the, whatever they're going to do, whatever their strategy is, that's gone.
Right.
And if you're still
Right.
involved in the business, because a lot of times they want you to be involved.
They
Um,
want you to be involved and they wanna run the show. Like, they have all
yeah,
the expertise. You've basically outsourced all that financial engineering piece to someone else, and they're gonna
yep,
do things differently than you and probably a lot more aggressively than you would have, because they've got an exit to worry about.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. There's just all kinds of things, and that is a huge part of it. But you really have to and people. it's it's like, and I want to, if you're really attracted to someone and you want to go on a date with them,
Yeah.
you really don't know what they like until you've been on a number of dates with them. And I think this is
Right.
what happens. And if you get past the point of you don't realize that who that person is, and you're still dating them and the deal is done,
Yeah.
you can get caught in those situations. And it's so key to do that, and just really do your diligence on who those people are as people and
Right.
their values, and do they align with what you want to do. Even and the other thing that you really have to understand, moving from a privately held into an investor held business, is there are simply things that they have to do differently.
Yeah.
You can't, I mean, and I'm not, I don't know that's 100%, and someone can prove me wrong day in and day out. But if I own my own business and I'm sitting here running it, and we go into a downturn, and I decide to keep paying the employees, even if I go through 6 months of losses and drain a lot of cash and all that kind of stuff, just because I feel it's the right thing to do. Investor-owned business is likely not going to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And there's just some things that are going to be done differently with that kind of an owner. And I think that's one of the things that we really talk about when we talk about business legacy, because there are, you get so big, you're going to have to sell it to, investors. There's really what you got to do. But, there are some things that we've really experienced over the last 3 to 5 years, where you look at, maybe an ESOP is a way for you to exit because it's a little different. An employee-owned option is really and it works out nicely in some situations, because it doesn't put a lot of those pressures like the financial buyers do. But it's so huge to understand who that next person is going to be, or that next group is going to be that's going to own you, because you are, whether you like it or not, you're married to them until your money is completely out. And then even if you're out financially and you see your business, you're driving by your business like you used to all the time, and you're seeing, first of all, you see it not running the way you want, or you see that it's no longer there.
Or that the people that worked with you for 10 or 15 years before you decided to do this are all gone, right?
Yeah.
Like there's this really interesting tension that I've seen some owners go through, where it's like they recognize the financial buyer can pay them a lot more, and they're trying to kind of thread the needle between, like, how do I get my payday and still protect my people? And it's a really hard one to manage.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And yeah, here, Jeff, we got some good comments here. I gotta hit this, because John, great discussion. How not to sell your soul.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sell
Well
your business.
put.
That is the truth. That is the truth.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit about, like, after, like, okay, I got the big check, and now do I feel like I got screwed over, or do I feel let down? And if you are able to get through the process without feeling like you sold your soul, the chances of you coming through that and feeling decent about it are a lot higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That fit, the fit is just so critical. If there's anything, and then after it's done, you will, if it's the right fit, when you see deals that are done, that it is the right fit, it's so much better, because you see it great. Yes. Nobody gets exactly what they want in a business sale. Buyer, seller, nobody does. You're going to end up somewhere in the middle. As long as that is somewhere in the middle, you're good there. But when you see a year or more down the road, and you see people are still smiling and happy, that's the good thing.
Yeah.
I walked into an acquisition of ours, one of our clients, just a month ago or so, and the founder of that business that my client acquired still works there. I talked to her for a moment about it, and she was very happy. She said, I feel like a weight has been lifted off of me, and I was a little bit uneasy at first, but there were some things that have happened in the meantime that have made me feel like this is the best thing I could have ever done. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Fantastic.
I'm like, oh my goodness. And then
that's why you do what you do, right?
Yeah. It's like when you put these good combinations together of buyers and sellers and stuff, there's really nothing like it. And it is such a sweet thing. And the mindset of that person that's selling that business, they really have to be ready for it, like you said, because there is for a lot of them, there's a time where I'm going at 110%, and it goes to, I don't have to get out of bed tomorrow if I don't want to.
Right. right.
How do do you
And
talk
after
with
about,
people like that? I mean, do you
oh yeah,
work with them like
and
that?
after about there's like a 3-day, hey, I got the big check and and I've I've had clients go through this. I've talked to friends who've gone through this, and then they realize, 3 days after, it's like, my life isn't really going to change that much because of the money. Like, I still have the same spouse and kids and family values, and the values of the person. Like, that's not fundamentally going to change. But now I have this gap in my identity, where before I was, Joe who runs XYZ Corp, and now I'm just some guy at the golf course, or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be, whoever that person happens to
Dropping the
be.
kids off at school or whatever, it's
Yeah, how do I fill that? And for most people who have come from this lifetime of achieving, it's really hard to fill that. And and what I've seen some people do is they realize, sometimes they realize before the fact. A lot of times it takes them until the actual exit to realize it. It's like, oh, that achieving was actually trying to cover up something. And now I have to look at that.
Yeah.
There's a great Jim Carrey quote, of all people. He said something like, I wish that everyone could become rich and famous and get everything they ever wanted to see that's not it. There's nothing out there that's going to make you happy if you're not already happy in here, right? And we don't live in a culture that instinctively looks internally.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Whew, that's wise advice right there. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Harry's got one other question too. He said, Jeff and Damon, you're in the roles of dealing with highly emotional transitions. What are the keys to make the process more of a transformation as opposed to just a transaction? Good one.
Yeah. You want to go first?
No, I want you to take this one.
But
I want you to take this one.
I think of transformation. There's a lot of talk about transformation as if it can happen, like that. And I think of transformation as like, it's a long journey. It's a long process. It's normally not one big, huge insight and then everything changes. It's like little, like almost little thought bubbles popping. It's like, oh,
yeah,
I'm working too hard. Oh, I could hire a really good finance person. Oh, if I just let them run with things, they do a better job than I do. Oh, and so on and so on and so on. And the earlier you can start that, I think the better any ultimate transaction is going to turn out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It is that transformation. It's wonderful to see. Mm-hmm. Wonderful to see when founders or owners really, or even just the highest level executives, start to realize that if I continue to get smart people around me, let them do what they need to do, but understand how just to whether it's through however you do it, understand that the business is running the way we want, even though they're doing it the way they do, which could be, I know nothing about, could be completely different than I would doing it if I was doing it. But if we know things are going right and they continue to build that team and allow them all to do their best work, that when you see someone going from the person that was running around trying to know every single person and what everyone is doing, and that's what they're doing all day. And that's what it feels like to me. It just feels like static on a television or something.
Right. Right. It's just kind of activity for the sake of activity. Right.
Oh yeah. And then when you see them, say see them 2 years later, when they've got that team, when they go, well, I don't know. what do we need to do here? And they're looking at their finance person or their operations
Yeah,
person.
like, oh, that's Mary's responsibility.
Yeah.
Let's see what she thinks.
Yeah, exactly. And they're coming into the office. They may come into the office at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they may stay until 2 in the afternoon, because they're going to go meet some other business people or do whatever. They're out doing their thing in industry stuff, or maybe they're just doing whatever they want. And you see that transition or transformation, as Harry said, from I can't leave the business because I'm like that, to I don't really know if I'm going to come in today, because I got it handled.
Right.
It's going to run better than I could have done it.
I have worked with so many people on this, where it's this. I mean, I had a client who literally said, my name is on the door, and it was actually his father's name, but still. So I need to be the first one in and the last one out.
Yeah.
And there's that, I have to be here in case, I have to be here in case people need me. I have to be, and the way I'll flip it is, so are people going to learn more if you're there or if you're not there? And they have to figure it out. It's like, oh. And suddenly it's like, well, wait, if I'm not here, that's actually not only good for me, but it's a developmental opportunity for my people. That's a total shift for people.
Yeah. Yep. I remember one of my early positions, I had someone that just put tons of faith in me, and it worked out. But I was like, and this was a little while ago. And I would call him every once in a while and go, man, it's been a month since we talked. And, it's your business. We haven't talked since the last board meeting.
Yeah.
You're off going around the world. He said, you got it. I know you got it. And I'm like,
oh, you sure about that?
Yeah. And when you get that kind of trust between the founder and their team and other things, and they can be doing the big things or doing other things that can help what they want to do, it is that transformation that we're talking about. And then that transaction that happens at the end of it, they really begin to, they've made that transition, first of all, that their identity is not the business anymore, or them in that business as much. Right. And that transaction, whatever that is, hopefully to the right buyers and all the other things we talked about, is much easier for them because they see their legacy moving on beyond them, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, and they've created a culture, and they've attracted people who actually want to be leaders.
Yeah.
Not people who just want to be told what to do.
Yeah. Huge difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Huge difference in the kind of people that you want to attract there.
Yeah.
Man, so great talking to you today, Jeff. Just so great.
I really enjoyed this. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. What you got coming up? You got some new stuff coming up? You got book coming out? Anything like that we want to talk about briefly before we get off?
Well, no book yet, although I'm always playing with that idea. I've got a couple programs that I'm in the process of putting together. One a little bit earlier. Enjoying the exit. Like if people are really wanting to know, how do I actually engage in some of this mindset work to ease the ebb and flow of the process of going through an exit. I mean, I think the idea of enjoying it is pretty radical for most people, given the typical experience.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and I'll probably do this early 25, just because so many deals close at year end.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with the idea of what I'm calling an exit detox. So you come through this, and it's just like you need some recovery time, right? You need to kind of you're in a lot of ways, your body is addicted to like the motion and the 80-hour weeks and the fire drills, and when that's gone, it's hard. And then how do you settle your system enough so that you can actually begin to think reasonably and a little bit more, holistically about what's next, instead of just what I've seen so many people do is they finish selling one company. Is like, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll go build another company. I'll make it bigger this time, so the exit is better. And it's like, it's just kind of fallen into the same pattern again.
Mhm.
And maybe that's exactly the right thing for you.
Yes.
And so, you know, but you got to give yourself a little bit of time to actually get some distance, get some perspective, and then think about what is it that I actually want to create next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Jeff, if someone wants to find you, contact you, what's the best way to reach out?
Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so connecting on LinkedIn is a great way. Email is jeff@jmunn.com.
Right.
Happy to connect with people if there's anything that sparked your interest or resonated in this conversation. Would love to have a conversation. And I just I'm really fascinated by this whole journey every step of the way, especially as it relates to people continually stepping back from, it's like you start with this great idea, and then how do you enroll people in that and let them take over and let a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that, until ultimately you can sell your business and think about what you want to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Jeff. I want to thank
you, Jim.
Harry and John, AJ, Harish for being here today. I think I've got everybody. God, we got a lot of good comments. Thanks so much for all those comments. If you got in here late and didn't hear Jeff from the beginning, you can get on any of the platforms where it's at, on LinkedIn, here on Facebook, on any of the other ones, YouTube, and start from the beginning. It's worth the time. Take the time to listen to it. And as Jeff said, if you want to reach out to him, connect with him on LinkedIn. Awesome stuff. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks everyone for being here. We'll wrap up offline.
All right. Take care.